Later that day, at the Falstaff architectural firm in New York City, the CEO, Johnny Falstaff, and his lead architect, Rick St. Michael, were chatting over a cup of coffee. It was an easy-going, comfortable sort of conversation, such as a father and son would have done had they been close.
So let me get this straight, Rick was saying. This Lord Crimson character is paying you $100,000 just for a meeting? It's a good idea. I mean, at the very least, you could use the diversion, don't you think?
I guess. I'll tell you what, though. I'm definitely intrigued. I've done a little digging, and apparently this guy's driven at least a dozen firms stark raving mad.
What?
That's right. It seems that his lordship doesn't know what he wants, and yet he knows exactly what he wants.
I'm not sure I follow.
Join the club.
The following day found Johnny Falstaff somewhere on the outskirts of London being escorted by Mr. Portico into Lord Crimson's office. Upon Johnny's entrance, his lordship stood up and extended his hand. Johnny took it and was impressed by the sincerity with which he was greeted. Mr. Portico was dismissed. Johnny was asked to have a seat, and the two men looked each other over. And Lord Crimson broke the ice. Thank you for making this time available to me.
It's my pleasure, sir.
Yes, well, before I explain why I requested this meeting, why don't you tell me a little something about this chap who works for you, this Rick St. Michael?
Johnny couldn't help but smiling. Rick was probably his favorite topic in the whole world. Maybe Lord Crimson wasn't as loopy as he'd been led to believe. There's an awful lot to tell, Johnny said. I'm not sure even where to begin.
Why not start with the reason you think so highly of him? Tell me why you lit up like a Christmas tree at the mention of his name.
All right. In a nutshell, the way I feel about Rick is that he's the son I never had. Quite frankly, Rick is without equal on so many levels that
Johnny caught himself. He loved to brag about Rick's attributes apart from his architectural abilities, but this was hardly the time. Let's focus on the issue at hand, he told himself, and picked up the subject again.
Forgive me, I assume it's his design skills you're most interested in, so let me make it simple for you. Rick St. Michael is the best architect I've ever known. He is, in fact, in a class by himself. Aside from a keen eye and disturbingly good artistic skills, he has an uncanny knack for knowing better than the client what he wants.
Johnny paused to study Lord Crimson's face. He was touched by the sadness in his eyes and could see that the man needed more. And after a moment's reflection, he went on.
Something I like even more about Rick is that even though he's treated pretty much like royalty in most circles, he remains completely unassuming. Not to mention the fact that he could have struck out on his own years ago, but I gave him his start. And now that our friendship has grown into something we both cherish above almost anything in the world, he remains loyal and will be at my side forever.
Johnny's expression softened, and his voice took on a whole new aspect.
There's one other thing, sir, and to me it's the most important of all. I have a feeling it will be to you as well.
There was an inherent goodness in Johnny's manner and tone that struck even the granite-laden Lord Crimson. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, his sadness took a back seat to another feeling entirely. Fascination.
Rick has the most unusual, indeed the most extraordinary little girl I've yet to encounter. And their love for each other, it just makes me feel like all's right with the world.
Johnny paused. This was it.
Now, Mr. Crimson, why don't you tell me what it is that I can do for you?
2 weeks later, Lord Crimson and Charlemagne were standing at the window watching the sunset. Lost in thought, Lord Crimson heard nothing, least of all his butler's entrance into the room.
My lord.
Startled, his lordship turned around. Yes, Mr. Portico, what is it?
Miss Havisham asked me to inform you, sir. She's just received a phone call from Mr. Falstaff. Mr. St. Michael has agreed to take on your project. He will be free to start on it next week.
To this, Lord Crimson said with a desperation lying just beneath the surface, "Let's pray for better luck with this one, shall we, Mr. Portico?" Then he added, with his voice just above a whisper, "Because, my friend, I fear the road ends here."